Welcome in, I'm Tyler, and this is Geeks and Suits, our video podcast.
Hello, I am Chase Gerber. I am your co-host. This is episode 1 of our podcast, Geeks and Suits.
And I'm Ben Gerber. This is the pilot. I couldn't think of a better title off the top of my head, so we went with something original.
The pilot is all it needs to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
the
There's no need for another title.
It's the first one.
Exactly.
And really, for anyone who knows Chase and I, first of all, well, okay, before I get into this, the first thing that we kind of discussed a little bit ago that Chase and I went over is how I'm kind of the control man. So You're probably going to hear me talk when it comes to like direction and explanations and stuff. And then when we get to the nerdy stuff, it's like...
Yeah,
it almost feels
we
like
go exploring.
It feels almost like an interview, sort of. Like I'm controlling the questions over here.
Right.
And then you guys just go ham. But
for
like,
the most part,
I contribute too.
Yeah,
but
well, for the most part, it'll be me and Tyler. Ben here is our guest star.
He's the guest
the
star that
taxi
will be here all the time.
Yeah, that'll constantly probably be here.
And I'm about to enter potential unemployment. I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
So you want
hopefully
to talk
not.
about that?
Not on here, but we'll just say that the job situation is completely in limbo right now. So we'll see how that
It's
shakes
all up
out.
in the air.
I might be good, I might not. I don't know. But anyways, what we wanted to try and do originally, anyways, was Chase and I had this idea. I wanted to go through with a podcast because I did an audio podcast once and I really enjoyed it. And then I talked to Chase, and since he's a media major, we had discussed the potential of doing like this nerd enhanced podcast.
Yeah. Mostly, pop culture, but we
Yeah.
love sports also.
Sports.
Sports
Yes.
will be a valid topic.
That's a
Sports
very
is
rare thing, like nerds that love
and
sports.
It's usually one or the other.
Yeah,
It's two separate worlds.
But no, believe us, we
It
love
really is.
sports just as much as we love pop culture.
It's really true, and I really enjoy both of them. Really an immeasurable amount.
When you think about it, they're two things that are easy to obsess over.
It's very true.
Which
I have an addictive personality, so that kind of makes it.
That's
easy
pretty
to
much how we
remember
roll.
stuff like that.
So
But
anyway, back to our podcast.
So yeah, we had originally done like an audio podcast, and the first one was an hour and a half long, and it was just kind of us finding our legs.
Yeah.
And
it was fun too.
It was fun.
Very fun.
But
maybe you'll hear it one day.
Yeah, it could. I don't know. Maybe.
Lost podcasts.
I just realized that being able to see myself and look at all the different videos, like that adds a whole other dimension. Like there's so much. I love
There's so
realizing
much more,
this in the
like,
middle of the
personality.
podcast. But it's true. Like you can actually read the facial expressions and just kind of understand the emotion. Whereas on an audio podcast, you have to be witty just by
Your voice does all the work.
Yeah, you have to do everything yourself, and now it's just like you can make a stupid face. That wasn't funny, but you can make a stupid face, and
you can
at least
express your.
But anyways, I've gotten sidetracked like 4 times already. So we wanted to do a podcast. The first one happened, and it was a good way to test things out. It wasn't the best, but it was a good way to kind of catch up on each other. And then the second one we did was actually going to be our first official one, and then we ran into the whole stumbling block of, everywhere that you go, you have to pretty much pay for audio podcasts, and that just wasn't acceptable. So
Nothing.
Here we are now. We are recording on 4 computers right now. Yes, 4 computers.
1, 2, 3,
Thanks
4.
for pointing
Count
it
them,
out,
3,
Ben.
4. Count 'em
But
out.
yeah, because
We're
we're not the richest bunch, and we're not gonna pay.
We say as
$700.
we're on MacBooks. Let's point that
With
out. We
3
do have
Star Wars
MacBooks.
posters.
But
and
besides
a
the MacBook,
frame.
I'm not gonna go out and buy
3 iPhones
4
as well.
cameras
No.
for a podcast that we might not know.
It's not the
It's
point.
true.
Off the ground. So
Yeah.
this is us
think-
testing the waters. So
I shouldn't have picked up your cat and then rubbed my eye. That seemed like a bad choice.
Allergies.
And I'm not even allergic. It's just maybe I am allergic and I didn't know it. Yay! Let's give
Yay.
me some Claritin.
okay.
So yeah, I don't know if as far as topics go, kind of what we wanted to talk about tonight is This isn't live. What we wanted to talk about
For this podcast.
Yes, what we wanted to talk about for this podcast was one of the things that we are most obsessed with, and a lot of nerds these
At
days
the
are
moment.
most obsessed with
It's a growing trend.
is Game of Thrones and the show, and we'll probably bring knowledge of the fact that we've all read the books into it at some point, but just to kind of as a jumping, like, no spoilers, don't worry about that.
TV spoilers up to what has aired so far.
Yes,
right.
Because season 4
through season 3,
as of this recording, season 4 starts in like 2.5
weeks.
And so we're going to assume that you've seen season 3. If you haven't seen season 3 of Game of Thrones,
stop watching right now.
Stop watching
or
now.
skip. We talk about other things.
Yeah,
you can
I
just
would
skip
skip
over
to about
this
the
part.
last fourth
Yeah,
of the
we'll
podcast.
try and throw in varying every now and then. We're still talking about Game of Thrones, people.
Okay.
So, yeah, one of the main things that we wanted to talk about tonight, and Chase, I believe you either have them or you know them by heart.
Yes, believe
me.
I've seen them enough.
Is the episode titles for season 4 of Game of Thrones. Now, for everybody that is not a book reader, they're probably in a lot of turmoil because of what happened. And
there's nothing really to pick it up after that
No.
Reigns of Castamere episode, really.
Yeah.
We thought there might be, thought they might bring something ahead to that final episode that might have lifted some spirits, but they didn't.
For book readers, there's a very specific chapter at the end of Storm of Swords, and when I say chapter, I mean an epilogue. We had theories that maybe they might bring that up.
I didn't realize that's what you guys thought would happen.
Mostly, I think me and Tyler both thought it would at least hint at it, you know?
Yeah, they wouldn't do that specifically, but they, like a scene with Beric
and Thoros, particularly,
would hint at it.
Knowing what I know now, I'm glad they didn't, though.
Yeah,
because
it would have caused more confusion.
It would have been too soon
People would have
for
figured
what
it
had
out.
just occurred.
That's true.
It wouldn't have allowed us enough time for feelings,
for grief,
certain feelings
it's true.
that I don't want to give away because of what the event is or whatever.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so episode titles. To begin off,
run them down.
Run them down. Okay, episode 1 we have Two Swords.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 2 we have The Lion and the Rose, or A Lion and a Rose, or I believe.
The Lion. I think it's The Lion and the Rose,
it doesn't
which is a
matter.
callback to The Lion and the Wolf.
Yeah,
episode 4 of the first season.
Yes. Okay, and then episode 3, I believe it's Breaker of Chains.
Right.
4 is Oathkeeper, and 5 it was just recently named First of His Name.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, so I guess we can start with episode 1, Two Swords. I think all three of us know what the Two Swords is referring to.
I just want to point out like how it's so easy to tell how many different meanings each episode name has. Like this is something like Game of Thrones, Benioff and Weiss are so good at doing for almost every episode is that there's more than one meaning to every episode title.
It's true.
Which is crazy when you think of how many different storylines that are intertwined in this story.
But anyway, Two Swords, to begin this one off, I know me personally, being the season premiere, I think it's basically going to be a general overview of everything with all of our main characters.
Yeah.
Especially...
that's how every season has been.
Yeah.
So
pretty much from season 2 and 3 you can kind of get the vibe.
But I think...
first season will just catch you up.
I think what we're going to catch with season 4, though, is we're going to see a little bit of every single character. I know the last 2 seasons, I think Arya's been left out. Jamie and Brienne were left out.
In season 2, Arya didn't show up till the very last.
Last
and
5
Rob
seconds.
wasn't even in the very first episode of season 2.
Actually, I think he was. He was one scene.
Yeah, we both just watched that the other night. I think he was in one or two small
ones. Was it episode 2 then that he?
No, it was episode 1.
I could have sworn it.
But anyway, what I'm saying, because of The Lion and the Rose, I think we can all assume we know that's the royal wedding, and that will take up a majority.
Joffrey, the sigils.
That'll take up a majority of the episodes.
That could be a singular event.
It could be. I don't think it will, but it definitely could be.
I think it could be,
or maybe even like the entire second half. Or maybe even like a Reigns of Castamere.
Yeah,
exactly. Where you have 3 storylines.
Yeah, like it's the intro of the show is that, and then it kind of disappears for a little while, and then the last 20 to 30 minutes
they bring it
is
back
all
around.
royal wedding.
So I think with Two Swords, I think we're gonna get a basic overview of all the main characters, maybe with the exception of the Stannis Baratheon storyline that's going on.
They don't need to go back to that for a while.
No, they really don't. They covered everything in Storm of Swords, as far as Davos's point of view goes.
Yeah.
And they don't come back until the
I have a feeling.
few chapters.
I have a feeling they'll create a little bit though.
Yeah, they definitely will. They'll have to.
Because where you get the idea that they're heading at the end of season 3, and what eventually happens in the book, there's a lot of gap time.
Yes.
Yeah, there definitely is.
So yeah, I think.
Well, they
don't want us waiting all season.
There was the 4th trailer was just released, and there was a shot in it that really made me think that with Dany's storyline, they're really speeding things
Yeah, they
up.
really.
They
And
are.
you know they have to
The
too.
shot of her on the rock with Drogon, that was something that made me think that they might be really
They're
speeding
really,
that
yeah.
storyline up.
I don't think it's as much as we think.
I don't either, unless that's like the very
Unless they're
last
mixing
episode,
things around also.
which is possible.
But for the next season, they wouldn't have anything to go on if
It's
they
true.
would go that far.
right. And well,
if
in terms of
anything-
excitement, after she conquers.
No spoilers.
No, I'm not. I'm
Oh,
not talking
sorry.
about in this season. After she conquered the slavers in
Yunkai.
Astapor and the Yunkai last season, there's kind of a gap in terms of action or any kind of twist for a while. So I feel like they need to speed things along and up the ante for in terms of what this season is going to be, because everything's going to be heightened.
Yeah,
the whole
And
time.
they could always just not have her in it that much, which kind of
True.
stinks. But
Yeah.
I
it
think
could
that
happen.
would really displease a lot of show watchers,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
They're all in it for
Well,
Dany and her dragons.
yeah.
There's a lot of show watchers that will be able to stick it because they're going to get a healthy dose of Jon Snow in this season.
Yeah,
also.
they
It
will.
seems like
Yeah.
those are the 2 most popular characters
Yeah.
other than Tyrion that are left. And at the very least, with Tyrion and Jon Snow, they're going to get more than the lion's share, no pun intended,
Yeah.
of those 2 characters
Right.
for this season.
Yeah.
So they might be able to forgive Dany being in the background.
Yeah.
And with everything that's happening, they
But
can
I-
easily forget
I
it.
think it's safe to say, though, from what we've seen in the trailers, she's going to have a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
Especially because they're gonna go into her material with Dance with Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Plus, there was stuff in the first half of Storm that they haven't done yet.
Yes, that
Oh,
one
yeah.
very particular moment, her first chapter,
Yes.
I believe, on the ship. I'm
Yes.
very curious to see how they come and
Yes.
play that out. Yeah.
I'm glad they drew that out and that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
yet.
I think it
Yeah.
needed to happen that way,
Mm-hmm.
the way they've done it.
Yeah.
Either way, it's still that's a very important chapter that that could easily draw out 3 or 4 episodes worth of Dany
Yeah, that's
content.
very true. That is
So,
very true.
That could get them.
And see, if they would have put that in last season, people would have forgot it by now.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the showrunners have been really good at doing. Is
Mhm.
Martin refers to one thing in like Game of Thrones or Clash of Kings and doesn't bring it back around till the 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But show watchers have a shorter term memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have to be reminded of things sometimes.
Yeah.
In order to realize that, okay, this is relevant to this season.
Yes.
Um,
Okay, so the 3rd episode.
Third
Third
episode,
episode
yeah. Third episode, Breaker of Chains. I believe from what I've read on the forums, a lot of people think it has to do with Dany's storyline, particularly. I know there's, yeah, exactly. Breaker
More
of Chains.
slave stuff.
I can't really think of a double meaning that it might have. I mean,
The word chains alone, from what you've been able to see in terms of what's happening to Tyrion in the
Yeah.
trailers.
maybe that
walking
is
in.
true. That is very true.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of shots of him in a cell or
Yeah.
in chains or something, and
So that's
that could
maybe
protect.
it could be.
potential
Potentially.
double meaning there.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Other than that, I mean, assuming that the Lion in the Rose is mostly the royal wedding, we'll see a lot of character storylines advance that we didn't see in that past episode, and we might finally get introduced to Stannis and his storyline.
The
whatever it
Manus.
may be.
The
Stannis.
Manus.
One thing that I feel like from everything that we've talked about kind of in the Game of Thrones off season, one storyline that I feel like is being not necessarily fabricated, but either completely moved up or that we're just forgetting about is Asha / Yara.
Yes, that is
Yara.
Because
Asha.
she didn't
sister.
show up until the very end of season 3
for one scene.
for
Yeah,
one
one
scene,
scene.
and now she's going to get Theon.
Yeah.
And
Which does not happen in the book.
no,
Hmm.
but that makes me wonder: are they going to
Move ahead,
or are we just suddenly going to have like a fast forward to book 4 for her storyline?
I mean,
because
we
it doesn't
could.
make sense with how her story ended
Yeah.
in the show.
Well,
Right.
I know we've discussed before how we think there's a lot of things that they are going to bring up in this season from Feast for Crows,
Mm-hmm.
because with the recent announcement that they're shooting for 7 seasons, maybe 8 for the entire
That's
thing, which is
crazy.
crazy to think about. But
Man.
if they're going for 7 seasons, that means everything with Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons has to be done by next season,
Definitely next season. And
which
they're
is
probably,
crazy to think about.
And I mean, if they keep at the pace that they're going now, from what we've kind of gotten a hint from the trailers this season, they could be digging into Winds of Winter stuff as early as maybe
Yeah.
halfway through next season.
That's assuming that George R.R. Martin gets Winds of Winter done in time.
Well, I mean, in terms of George is probably going to have to tell Benioff and Weiss.
yeah, that's
He
stuff.
has-
but that's a whole nother
It's happening,
conversation.
yeah,
We'll
this
discuss
season.
that later.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, we can circle back to that here in a little bit.
Yes,
4th episode title.
4th episode, Oathkeeper.
I think we all know what that's
We
about.
all know what that means. That
Yep.
also means Brienne's storyline from Feast for Crows definitely will be coming forward for this season.
It's a
I think that's all we
Yeah.
can really judge by this episode.
And that's all we can really say at this point because there's so many
Yeah.
events that lead to what's
Yeah.
gonna
yeah.
happen with her.
Yeah, I know. You and me were talking about it. How, that last reveal they might bring some things ahead for Feast for Crow. That'll be that last epilogue reveal that
Mhm.
they may be
Through
doing.
her.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah. So. That's what we got from Oathkeeper. Last one that is confirmed is First of His Name. That's episode 5.
Yeah.
I think we all know what we think, and we assume that this episode's mainly going to be about.
But there's a lot of
There
theories.
can
going
be some
on.
double meaning there.
There's
though.
a couple double. There's two. Well, there's one for sure double meaning that
Mhm.
makes some sense, even though it seems like it's accelerated.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
there's a second double meaning that we came up with that seems extremely far fetched.
But I mean, hey, you never know. Personally, I think when it comes to the Song of Fire and Ice Forms, and Ben can agree with me on this, they try and dig a little too deep on some
Yeah.
of these things.
Some of the things they theorize and think they'll leave out of the show or they'll put in the show.
I think they're trying to look way too deep into the story sometimes.
I think that's just excessive hope or speculation,
Yeah.
just wanting to talk
And I mean,
about
I
something.
can't really blame them because I know it's been a long haul for some of the long-time book readers
Oh my
who
God.
Yeah.
started with Game of Thrones.
And have waited 15?
It's been
It's almost 20 years.
20
it's been
years.
17 years
First
since the first one came out.
Yeah, it's been almost 20 years.
Yeah,
So.
so
We can understand why they.
we
they
can
almost
definitely
feel,
understand.
It's like they almost feel the
Storm-
need to actually create the story themselves because it's
Storm-
just it's been so
Yeah,
long.
Storm came out in 2000.
2000.
correct? Yeah,
And then
2000.
for multiple complications, Feast for Crows was until 2005.
and
Dance
then,
with Dragons not until 2011,
yeah,
which is very, very
excessive.
extended for any book series, really. The most
Yeah.
I've waited for a book before this has been 3 years.
For
It would have been the Inheritance Cycle,
okay.
which I
Fair
don't
enough.
expect you to read.
Thank
It's more of a
Thank you
high
for
school.
lowering the standards there.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Still love the series,
I guess
but
I would have lowered my standards if it was a high school thing.
Yeah.
But,
definitely. Okay.
um,
So that's the episode titles we have
yes,
so
up to
far.
this point.
I'm assuming I would think they'll release the names somewhat soon. The rest of them, but I mean, who knows? They might keep them hidden.
I forget.
until-
Is this the way that they
Well, when
released them last year? Because
when did
I
they
remember like
last year they released all of them
I thought
right
at
together,
I thought it all one. Well, yeah,
except like one or two.
I thought that was the last 2 of the season.
No, because I remember when they released the first, they released all but 2 or whatever. I remember I texted you
Oh yeah,
Reigns of
episode 9,
Castamere
Reigns of Castamere.
is episode 9, and you're like, well, we know exactly what that is.
Yeah, we know exactly.
I remember
when the
you
Red
guys
Wedding is
talking about it.
Yeah,
so
that was very evident from. You're right. It was weird. Now that you say that, it was kind of weird. It was two just kind of like right in the middle.
Yeah,
it didn't make sense
yeah.
why.
Actually, I think it was the finale, and then I think it was the 6th episode, maybe.
The Climb.
The Climb. I think it might have been that one.
Yeah.
It might have also been, and now his watch is ended. Episode 4,
which was a huge, which was the first.
The first death.
Besides the very end of the 3rd episode where Jamie lost a hand.
Yeah.
That was the really first big episode.
That sort of kicked it off.
Season.
Mm-hmm.
And through episode 5, it died down a little bit, and then Reigns of Castamere just broke through the roof.
Right.
Yeah, there's gonna be a whole lot of
It's not gonna take 3 or 4.
Yeah,
episodes.
it's not.
It's gonna be a lot of moving and shaking.
Yeah.
Really quickly in this season.
A lot of twists.
And it's not gonna stop.
A lot of jaw-dropping moments.
Yes, definitely.
I'm really excited to see if they can somehow pace it so that there's at least one per episode. So that every single week you're like, oh my god, what just happened?
And honestly,
they can easily do that.
The way they're making it sound,
too.
It sounds like that's what they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I mean, just from the episode titles that we've seen, I think we can assume big things are happening every single episode.
Yeah.
With maybe the exception of episode 1, just because it is the first episode. But I mean, who knows?
I read. I don't know if you guys saw it on the Game of Thrones subreddit. There was a guy who posted who said he watched the first episode. I don't know if he was at the premiere.
I think
last night or what.
Too.
But
I did read through it.
He was talking about he kind of described each scene he remembered and stuff. And there was one thing at the very I didn't try and read it all because I didn't want to know everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of skimmed and I caught one thing that has to do with Dany's storyline. How am I gonna as she's traveling? That I don't know if you guys. I'm just gonna say she's traveling. I'm not saying where or to, but if you guys remember from Storm of Swords, there's something that repetitively keeps happening almost a certain distance that she runs into, and I think he described that as being like the last thing at the end of the first
That'd be
episode.
very cool. Yeah.
So it's funny. Not giving anything away with saying this, but it's kind of a foreshadowing pretty much for the whole season, maybe.
Yeah.
In terms of people's just state.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna have to read that now because even though I same kind of just skim it, but
it's very interesting.
Huh.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, just in terms of her storyline, it's. Yeah. Very fortunate. I mean, we've all seen the trailers that the quote for like this year. The slogan is "All men must die," and the trailers are not joking around about that at all. They're dead serious.
It's gonna be a great season. Yeah, I mean, me and Tyler both think this will be up there with Breaking Bad season 4 for us.
Yes.
I definitely think that.
Okay.
I don't know if it could be Breaking Bad season.
It's tough. I don't know. You've told me before that you think it will,
I keep going back.
It's
because Breaking Bad season 4 is so maddeningly good.
Yes.
Because it builds. It's the slowest pressure cooker of a build that never ever stops bubbling, and then the last 3 episodes are the most satisfyingly chaotic episodes. And I forget who I was talking to the other night. I don't think it was you guys. Could have been. But the episode, I've told you both, in Crawl Space, Season 4, Episode 11, is my favorite moment in the series.
Unbelievable.
I'm going so far as to say that's my favorite moment that I've ever seen in any TV show. Is that moment where Walt just
loses it.
Yeah. He's done. Snaps. And he's officially Heisenberg at that point.
I seriously...
It's such a moment.
I've watched that over and over, and it might be my favorite moment in acting, period.
Is Crawl Space?
Is Cranston in that scene. It's just one of the greatest displays of acting
He goes
I have
like
ever seen.
across the spectrum.
You count how many different range of emotions he has to play.
Like panicked, and then furious, and then
maniacal,
like, and those are just like the big.
And then like
moment.
his soul leaving him.
Yeah,
at one
which
point.
as it
you like see
slowly.
his like body like convulse. It's almost like a demon's coming.
Yeah,
out of him.
it's him like kind of laying out like that, and then just kind of like
yeah,
and the camera just slowly like panning away, and
it
then
starts
it gets,
getting
shaky.
shaky.
shakier, and then it just cuts.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
That's such, and that I mean that's almost all Cranston, but that's just as much Gilligan.
Yeah, the
and
film.
I need to see who directed that episode because they're just as much a part of it too.
Everyone is part of that scene.
That's why, because, and another reason why that will probably remain my favorite season of any TV show ever is because we didn't know it was coming.
Right.
We know what's going to happen about Game, and it's awesome to know what's going to happen in Game of Thrones, and it's awesome to know that we're going to get to see these things played out beautifully.
Finally.
We've already had that shock factor, though.
Yeah.
With Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So. And with Breaking Bad, you never knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And it was such a ridiculously crazy ride all the time.
Yep.
And that's why I think that no matter how good this season is, that's why Breaking Bad Season 4 is just going to be like a step above it.
Right. I think Thrones is going to be a different pace this season, too. It might be the best.
It will be.
But it throws everything at you all season, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you were saying...
You don't catch your breath.
Breaking Bad is a build-up, and it's almost like it's crafted masterfully, one stroke at a time.
It starts with box cutter, and you're like, oh, God, this is how the season's going to go? And then it kind of then it lulls, but it doesn't... But you think that it's lulling. But
it never quits,
though. You in. Yeah. Like, I had friends who, at the time I wasn't watching the show, but it was when I was first on Twitter, and I had friends who watched the show saying that Season 4 of Breaking Bad was the most boring season yet.
Oh.
And when I think about that now, I'm like, are you guys idiots?
Yeah.
Like,
no,
this
not
is
at all.
easily the best season
I guess if they were following along week by week, episode by episode on AMC,
and not being able to binge
and
it,
not being able to see how they were connected so fast, I can see why around 5, 6 they were starting to get impatient.
What's the point?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, just let it go.
Yeah.
Let it
just
ride out.
Just let it play out.
Trust it for a little bit.
If you haven't watched Season 4, trust us. Just get to the end. It's gonna be
please.
Yes.
It's all gonna be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to our main topic, Game of Thrones.
Anyway,
yes.
So we've discussed the episodes.
We got the episodes, I believe. Next, I think one thing we all talked about. We came up with it yesterday. They had the that special kind of inside look at Season 4, the Bastard video, and I think
the
all
making
of us,
bastards.
All of us, basically, yes.
Which is really just done out of wedlock.
Yeah.
Right. No, we're not insulting. We're not insulting anyone when we say this. We're literally they're bastards. They're bastards.
They're bastard shows.
So I think the main thing that we all really took away from that video and really want to discuss is the Ramsay, Bolton, and
Ramsay
Snow,
technically.
Ramsay Snow. How their scenes together are gonna go.
He's vying for that surname though.
Because I know after seeing that video, I'm really looking forward to their scenes together.
I wasn't expecting that many scenes, and
it
seems like we're gonna get a lot.
I think they're pushing that dance plot forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Which,
and once again, they have to.
Yeah.
For the sake of not leaving characters out for a whole season.
Plus, again, that kind of keeps Theon relevant.
Yes,
still
it does.
Also.
Yeah. Right, because he's with them.
And it's more that we haven't seen of Theon because he wasn't in book 3 and 4. It's like we picked up in book 5 kind of where this is going, but we're still
we didn't
not
see
there
anything
yet.
in between. Yeah.
No, it's still not at the point. But people have discussed claiming, we see Theon, he must be at so-and-so place that everyone seems to talk about and theorize that he's at already.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen until the 5th book. I don't know if that's going to be the case or if there could, maybe possibly be a whole different plot in between, the stories in the books that,
Yeah.
And maybe that's just a chance for them to build more of a dynamic between Roos and his son. Because, go ahead.
Because that'd be something good going.
Well, actually, and the more I think about it, the trailer that was just released, I believe, at some point in it, I forget if it's Tywin or Jaime, but someone says how Arya Stark has not been seen by anyone.
That was actually Jaime.
Was it Jaime?
Yeah. You hear, you don't see him say it, but you hear the voice.
And
you see Ramsay and Roos, and then it cuts to Arya.
Yeah, so that's something that will kind of. I think
they'll
build
pick up on that.
Yeah, I know. I didn't at first. I just now thought about it.
Lack of Arya, starts to become a factor this season when people
realize
have a chance to sit down and not think about everything else that's going on. They do have to remind themselves that Arya's still out there.
Without going into it, I'm honestly worried that people are going to be pissed off at where Arya's storyline is going.
I could see it too.
I remember this
just because it kind of her story. It's not that it's bad. There's just not a lot of content in the books. You know what I'm saying?
It's not what you'd expect.
It's not
from her.
See, I think as merely a show watcher. Last year, at the end of season 3, you see her, she picks up the coin and says Valar Morghulis, and you think, oh snap, okay, well she's gonna, find Jack and Hagar and the Faceless Men again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really excited about that, and as a show watcher, it's what I wanted, and I feel like people might be excited for that and where she might end up going. But once she gets there, and they discover, okay, this is what she's going through and stuff, this is how... she's supposed to build herself up and become the kind of character, a lot of people want her to become. That's where I think it really might.
Well, there's a lot of character maturity that people might not be ready to sit through.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of, at least the way that's detailed in the chapters, it's a lot of mental growing that I think it'd be hard to display on screen.
It's almost like the Hunger Games movies to an extent. Like when you read the books, there's so much
going on in the mind of Katniss.
Yeah, and then you watch the movies, and
you don't get any of that.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. And I think, there's that in Game of Thrones too, but there's been the characters, the ones who have gone through like the most growth, like for example, like Jaime. He's always had someone like Brienne to talk to or interact with, whereas what Arya's going to go through, she kind of doesn't really.
Ned in the first book.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah, there's a lot
in
internal thought about his family and his sister specifically that doesn't even get relayed at all.
Yeah, and I would say
that's an important element that show watchers just don't get.
Yeah,
right.
And I would say, if you're thinking about reading the books, we've said you could probably skip over Game of Thrones and not miss too much, but it's definitely worth reading just because of Ned's chapters. That is definitely it.
Yeah, you have to read Ned's chapters.
It does. It gives a lot of background to what happened before.
And then you have to do your research after reading Ned's chapters, because reading it just by yourself, you might not be sure what we're talking about. But there's a giant, do your research and you'll find out what we're talking about
based off of his chapters.
Sticking with the Game of Thrones, the first book thought process, I even asked you this when I read it because I went through the first 4 chapters and I was like, "Do I have to read Sansa chapters?" And you said,
"Not really."
You were like, "Nah, you can skip them," and I was like, done. And I didn't read another Sansa. And you said until the last Sansa chapter of Clash of Kings, you can probably get away with skipping Sansa chapters because nothing happens in those chapters that doesn't happen in the show.
There's a few differences, but
nothing that matters.
Nothing you really missed.
Nothing major.
And I know at that point, because I was on your boat too, by the end of Clash of Kings, I was basically skimming because I just wanted to get to Storm of Swords because I had already seen season 2.
Right.
And I wanted to get to Storm of Swords and see what everyone was
raving about.
Over.
Yeah, just raving
especially because we had heard of the Red Wedding. We didn't know what it was, but we had heard of the Red Wedding.
Yes.
Do you remember, I remember you told us there was this thing called the Red Wedding that was supposed to happen. And
that was
instantly,
before any of us had even started reading the book.
Instantly my mind went to, okay, that's whenever Joffrey's going to marry you. Sansa, because that was the only arranged marriage that we knew of at the time.
And then the book brilliantly throws like 4 weddings at you.
You get Tyrion
and like
Tyrion and Sansa, the royal wedding, the Cersei and
Loras
wedding.
that and actually it's Cersei
then,
and Willis in the book. Cersei and
yes,
Willis.
yeah.
And then there's one even after that too in the coming season, involving I don't know if I should say this.
Then don't say it.
I won't
if you're
say
not
it.
sure.
I'll remind you of it after.
But even
there is another.
Even in the 4th
it's not
season,
that
or even
big.
in the 3rd season, the 4th marriage was then the one that actually ended up being the red wedding that we're not even mentioning.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what everybody's mind was like. Red wedding, sweet. That's when Joffrey's gonna eat it.
Yeah.
And instead, everybody that we love dies.
Wrong.
Just
flip the
change.
script.
Yeah, and it was so deceitful. And I still remember reading those chapters and not even realizing that something was wrong.
Yeah.
Until it was too late.
Well, I remember the trigger for me. I remember somewhere in the books. I think it was Arya's chapter. Someone said something about Lannister forces moving towards the twins to like attack the twins, and I thought, oh no, the Lannisters are gonna show up this wedding and just f everything up.
Yeah,
but they're going to. You thought they were going to attack.
Yeah,
as in, hey, we're at your front doorstep and we're attacking.
And I think Martin does such a brilliant job in the books. Like he gives you very subtle hints that
there's a lot of them too.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtle hints. Especially
even in the show, there were a lot.
Yeah, that they're gonna get ambushed there, but you don't notice them. And you read this chapter and you think like, okay, just get this wedding over with and keep heading north to Winterfell. Take back Winterfell.
I remember that was a really long chapter too.
Yeah,
like it was just like, all right, let's get through it.
Yeah, and then
describing all the people in the wedding and the
of course Martin and his feast. The way he describes his feast, he could go
on bountiful amount of
And I remember I was skimming through it. I'm trying to get through. I'm like, okay, let's go north, and all of a sudden I see Reigns of Castamere, and I'm like
that's all you had to read.
Oh no, and it happened.
It wasn't even that for me. Like and it probably should have been, but what got me was exactly like the moment where it was too late, where it's like in the show where
the
Cat
armor
pulls up and sees the armor, and as soon as because I think they say something in the book too about like closing off the hall or something.
Yeah,
after the closing of the door.
Yeah, after the bedding ceremony
after they escorted
completed
them out.
and it gets kind of somber, and I was like, well, all right, and I almost expected the chapter to end like really quickly.
Yeah, so did I.
And then all of a sudden, Frey starts talking, and I'm like,
what's going on?
And Catelyn's thoughts are just like something's off. Something's not right.
Yeah.
There's really
I know
that's
like this.
I know that's a mental anguish that I almost wish that we could have gotten somehow in the show, because her thoughts racing around at that point are so scattered.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, and then all of a sudden it just goes haywire. And I think we're still of the opinion that we're glad that the way Kat died
was
so not
too.
Featured.
Yeah.
The way she died in the book. With the level of insanity.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's
lost it.
laughing and crying at the same time, and then doesn't like a crow come and start pecking at her.
She claws at her face.
She claws at her face.
And the blood runs down her arms, and she starts laughing because
and crying.
And because it tickles, and she's crying and laughing.
Yeah.
And then you just you read she's hearing people say she's mad.
She's gone crazy.
She's insane. Just end it. And then the crow comes and starts pecking at her. And then the final line of it's
the bite was
the bite
cold
was
and red.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember thinking too right at the end. Another reason I'm glad the way they did it, the way they did it in the show was the viewers were right there with her, feeling that same amount of dread, and we were all sitting on the couch with the same expression on her face that she had at the very end.
Chase and I were kind of sitting back.
Well, you guys were different.
We're
kind of smirking, but at the same time, it was tough to watch.
Because us show watchers were sitting there with our jaws open, just like her, just distraught. clueless, speechless, having no idea how to react to what is happening.
I know, yeah. I think even Dory started shedding a few tears.
She shed multiple tears.
Did she?
I have to admit,
I know, Braley
and
was just trying not to.
You were pissed because you're like, I knew it!
I heard Reigns of Castamere enough before that episode to know once that violin started playing, I was so
over.
I knew shit was
Unfortunately
about
for
to go down.
show watchers, I don't think they got the full effect when the Reigns of Castamere came on.
That's why, like, I've had friends whom I've gotten
I try
into,
to explain it to
I
most
try to
people.
tell them, okay, this is a Lannister song. You need to remember this song because this is very important.
Yeah.
This is a very important
Without trying to,
song.
like, give it away
Yeah.
because then they'll be, like, searching for it.
I try to explain it, like, I don't explain it while it's going on, but I try to explain, like, House Rain, they tried to rebel.
What it means.
Tywin destroyed them. He wrote a song about it that's really gloomy and eerie. And
Right.
I can't listen to the actual version of it, and The National is one of my favorite bands, and I can't even listen
You
to
can't?
To them sing the...
I can't listen to them sing it.
It's
because
so
it's just,
creepy.
It's so creepy.
But
every once in a while
I
I listen to it and I get chills.
can.
I'll always get chills when I listen to it.
Honestly, at this point, I can watch The Reigns of Castamere, though, without
I can almost
trouble.
I can watch it easier than I can listen to that song.
Really?
Weirdly enough.
Something, it's just how...
It's so eerie.
And at least, if show watchers weren't able to catch, oh, that's a Lannister song, just the tone of the song itself, it feels like funeral, eerily dark music.
Yeah.
So you can at least catch that. But,
So
we could go on forever about that
could.
scene,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Was there one other thing we wanted to talk about Game of Thrones?
Actually, there's two others. We can do
Maybe
either
we
one
should just-
first. We can kind of morph them together, I guess, because they can kind of
Yeah,
go
we're
together.
like over 40 minutes in.
Are we really?
Maybe we should just do one.
Yeah.
Okay, which one would you rather
Oh,
do?
okay, what do we got? Either the show
Movie
catching
or
up with the
stock?
books.
I
or
think
the
we
movie.
should do the movie. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's more news.
movie's fresher too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Movies are
Fresh.
the New York premiere of Game of Thrones season 4 was last night.
Right.
We're recording this on Wednesday.
We're recording this the
19th.
day after. You'll probably get this, I don't know when, sometime.
It all depends on
But
when you
last
finish
night,
editing.
George R. Martin discussed in an interview the possibility of a Game of Thrones movie
After the series.
after the series to kind of wrap
6
things
seasons in a
up.
movie.
6 seasons in a movie.
Community's so close to that, man. It's so close.
It's happening.
It's
It's happening.
So close.
Yeah.
I can't
We're
wait.
gonna get that on there.
But
Yes.
anyways, as we stay on topic here, Game of Thrones movie. What do you guys think about this?
I don't even know what they do.
Well,
Obviously.
I think the one thing that I think would be the main reason for it, and Martin discussed this, would be the budget. Because
movie
Game of
budget.
Thrones, it's incredible what they've done with their budget
Mm-hmm.
so far.
And
They
when you
made Blackwater like the best action
Yeah.
episode of any
sequence.
TV
Yeah,
show
and I
ever.
mean, I think we're gearing up for one kind of like that at the end of this season also.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say so.
Yeah.
So, I think the budget thing, he said, $100 million for a 2-hour movie, that'd be pretty enticing.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
there's all that budget, they can make the dragons look incredible, they can make the direwolves look incredible if they're still alive, hopefully.
If the dragons are still
If
alive.
the dragons are still
We'll
alive,
see.
hopefully. So yeah, that's...
I think the other thing too, along with having that big of a budget, is, even us book readers, we can't speculate as to how everything will end.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still this building of, the White Walkers from the north and the dragons, and how eventually this
the
could
Song of
still
Fire and
happen.
Ice, or Ice and Fire.
It's a song of ice and fire. So you get the idea that eventually these two things are going to clash. And if those two clash, that's a ton of special
All
effects.
hell breaks
The one
loose.
thing that I kind of hope is that because of Game of Thrones being an established show at this point, that the actors portraying the characters would not be overly demanding and take away from a budget. I could see them getting a pretty good payday, but I mean to hold out for like 10, 15, 20 million,
Which they could do.
they could do, but I feel like at the same time they would understand, and if their agents weren't, complete douchebags,
Right.
they would understand that like I was a part of this show.
This is a group
And
effort.
this is a thing that I need to be a part of, not only for my acting legacy, but for the legacy of this series.
This epic
and
series.
I would think that everybody involved in the show at this point, because of how big of a phenomena it has become worldwide, would at least respect that and not hold out or hold up the project, basically, unless they were so busy with offers coming in from other places, and that's a totally different situation than holding it up because they want a bigger paycheck.
Yeah. But I don't think there's really any egos from what we've heard in the show with any actors.
Yeah. Like, especially, I mean, we saw Maisie Williams at Comic-Con. I mean, she absolutely loves being in the show.
Yeah. She
with Sophie and Isaac and all of them. I don't think any of them would be a problem.
The closest that you get to that, it seems like, would probably be with either really any of the three Lannister children.
Cersei
and Jaime and Tyrion.
All three of them are becoming big name actors.
And Cersei and Tyrion had been before, and Lena Headey and Peter Dinklage. They had been probably the most active before that.
Other than Sean Bean, probably.
Yeah, other than Sean Bean. And then the only person, or there's two people outside of those three that I could see potentially being problem children. And that's Emilia Clarke, only because her star is rising.
Definitely.
And she just got cast in the new reboot for Terminator.
Yeah.
Yep.
And something else. I forget what
the other one, I'm sure you guys probably can guess it. It's Kit Harington.
Yep. Oh, he's in Kit Pompeii. He'll be getting big time stuff too.
Yeah, and he was in. It was in theaters for 14 seconds, but he was in Silent Hill Revelation.
I remember
seeing
that.
Did Sean Bean live in that?
I don't know.
I'd like to watch that movie just to figure out who
that needs to be podcast episode 2, the watching of Silent Hill.
Does Sean Bean
or Battleship?
Battleship.
We still have to do that.
We need to do that sometime.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can we watch those on a video podcast?
No, I don't think we can watch them. I think
we can discuss them.
We can probably watch them, but we can't show them.
Yeah. No, we couldn't show them. Yeah. We could. Our reactions and us just making fun of the whole thing.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
We need to do that for like a Batman and Robin type movie too. Just some terrible movie.
Gross. Well, Battleship is probably going to fill in that role. Just from what I was texting you that one time.
Oh,
I'm still so pissed that I didn't watch the ending, only because it's been this long.
You've had to wait for so long to see how badly it ends.
Just to see how much they messed it up at the end.
Yes.
As entertainingly horrible as that was, just watching Rihanna try and act her way out of a wet paper bag. It was not.
Oh, man.
And Stellan Skarsgård, or not Stellan, dude from True Blood, Alexander Skarsgård, he dies like 20 minutes into the movie.
Oh my!
He was one of the top billed guys.
I don't even know who that is, but
he's one of the main guys on True Blood, and he played Eric, and he was on Generation Kill, and
I don't know that either.
He's in both. Well, True Blood, I can see neither of you really enjoying. Generation Kill was a great HBO miniseries.
Okay, I didn't know. Like it was HBO.
I actually, it's about like the very beginning of the war in the Middle East in like the early 2000s when we first went over there.
Oh, okay.
And one of actually, you guys know Luke Hall.
Yeah.
And how he went over there. He's watched it, and he said it's the most accurate depiction in media so far of the war. At least over there. This was like 2 years ago, I think, when I asked that question on Facebook, and he responded by saying that. But
so you said it was early '90s, so would that have been Desert Storm?
No. It was like the war in the Middle East, like in the early 2000s.
Oh, 2000s. I'm sorry, I thought you said early '90s.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, Generation Kill then came out like I think in 2008, 2009, something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's like a 7-episode miniseries. Each episode's an hour long. It's really, really good.
Have to check Go app for that.
Yeah, that'd be on. That would. I think it is on Go.
I love. There's so much of that stuff on there.
Yeah. So, but anyways, as far as like, just speculation on what the movie would involve.
I would assume it'd be kind of tying up everything.
Showdown.
At the end.
It'd be the showdown. I think.
The showdown. I don't know if there will be a showdown with the way Martin ran.
That's
true. Do you think they would make almost like a Lord of the Rings type situation,
In
with
terms
one
of epic
book.
scale.
Yeah. No, there's
no.
no way.
I
mean, well,
even 2 movies like Kill Bill It, Volume 1 and 2.
I don't know.
I tell
I
you
guess
what.
it depends on the scale of that book and how much they get accomplished in the next 3 seasons if they're only going to do 7 seasons.
And who's to say how many people Martin cuts out in these next 2 books?
Yeah, that's true.
He's built up so much, and he can narrow it back down to the level of what it was like at the beginning of Game of Thrones. You know,
I hope
he's cut out people in the next couple books.
In the next
couple books that he's already released and that we just can't talk about.
I mean,
definitely.
yeah, and I mean, I hope so because Dance with Dragons is a great book, but there were so many viewpoint characters.
There were a lot.
So many. I counted one time. I think there was 22.
And there was one that dies that you and I agreed. Why was he in there then?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
It was literally.
I still enjoy it just for the chapter.
Yeah. Just for the very last one.
Because
where
it's
that
pretty
character
bad.
does
But
die.
other than that.
But yeah.
But you know, going back to the whole Lord of the Rings situation, the only way I would agree to if they would do that type of thing is if they let every movie be 3 hours or more long in order to get everything in.
They draw it out.
Which, I mean,
with $100 million budget, they could.
They could.
And here's the other thing is, any studio would be willing to get their hands on that too, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Warner Brothers has done it in the past, but for some reason, you know, I mean, Warner Brothers has picked up HBO shows in the past. They picked up Sex and the City, and they picked up Entourage now.
Mm-hmm.
They would, if for some reason they would not take that for,
it'd be
I have no idea why.
Hot commodity.
There would be so many studios running after it because everyone would flock to the theater
That's
for that.
very true. Yeah.
Everyone would.
So
they'd make a huge profit on it, no matter how much the budget was. Anyway.
So
true.
So pay the actors whatever.
Unless it was
let them flex.
horribly done. But I if they've got everyone involved, if literally the only thing that changes is that it's a movie instead of.
I mean, there are changes that you have to go through if it's, you know, compared from TV show to movie. That
you'd
know,
still
could
have to
ruin
have
it.
Benioff and Weiss on as
Definitely.
consultants,
Right?
if nothing else.
Right.
Oh, they'll be involved to the very end.
Yeah.
They definitely will. George
It'd
R. Martin trusts them.
That would be the
Yeah.
one weird thing is that it's all one director.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Where the TV show, you know, it's got so many different directors that come in and shoot one or
Maybe
two
just
episodes
have
of the
Neil
season.
Marshall do it.
I would
because he's-
totally be okay with
he's-
that.
If it's as epic a scale as we're speculating,
Yeah.
Neil Marshall would be perfect.
because he's
for it.
got Blackwater, he's got episode 9 of this season.
I'm assuming
and
he'll have something for the next big bathole or battles.
In Winds of Winter, you mean?
Yeah. that
Yeah,
are
it
coming.
wouldn't surprise me. And I mean, he's directed, I want to say, at least 4 movies, 4 or 5 movies,
Yeah.
like including The Descent and Doomsday, and there's another Dog Soldiers, which I never saw. But I think that actually in Dog Soldiers, there's 2 Game of Thrones cast members, including Sir Davos himself.
your boy.
Davos.
My boy Liam Cunningham.
Yeah, that's your man.
And there's somebody else too, I thought, but maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe it's another famous TV show. And I could have sworn there's another Neil Marshall movie that I'm just forgetting. But he's done, basically, he would be, in theory, just in speculating and in theory, he'd probably be the best initial choice for directing of a Game of Thrones movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Well, I think that wraps up our Game of Thrones talk for today.
It only took over 50 minutes, assuming everything stays in.
We'll switch gears here now.
Okay.
Somehow try and get in a little bit of talk about sports, because we do cover both.
And it is March Madness.
It is. The madness starts
It is
tomorrow.
on.
Okay, one good thing about potentially being unemployed and having like as
being able to watch all the games.
I work 3 hours to 4 hours tomorrow. I've worked 4 hours every day this week. I don't have to go into work until 5. I can watch.
Oh my goodness!
Probably
you'll be able to watch
so
all
8
the
games tomorrow. I'm so excited.
Oh,
I'm
man,
just gonna
that's
order
insane.
a pizza, drink a beer, and just sit in my house for 5 hours and just watch.
Man.
And Ohio State's the first game.
Really?
I did not realize that.
Ohio-
Oh yeah, because I'm gonna.
What time do they play?
It's 12:30, I think.
Yeah.
It's OSU Dayton is the first game, and then the second game doesn't start for like another
Dang, I
half
have
hour.
class.
I had a coworker.
Don't have my iPad with me. Hannah took it to Colorado.
I had a coworker today who claimed
That's
that he
tough.
was gonna come into work at like 4:00 this coming morning because he actually went to Dayton. So he wants to go home so he can watch the Dayton OSU game. And I told him he's full of crap. There's no way he's going to do that.
More power to him if he does.
Yeah,
I know,
hey,
but
that's still insane.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
you
it's
wouldn't be able
dedicated
to enjoy it because you'd be tired.
as crap. Exactly. But the other thing, where I work at, it may be tax season right now, but the main partner is a huge sports fan. I talk sports with him all the time. Half the office are male beings who watch sports.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to be the general culture that everyone's going to have a browser open, general culture. Having a browser open and watching at least one game. I'm going to have my iPad and I might have two browsers.
That's going to be, if I'm able to, not like, since I'm going to be able to watch a lot of them now, just kind of at will, I'm going to do that. But that's going to be me, and I know you guys don't care about this, but that's going to be me during the World Cup too.
Yeah,
is
watching
all those Manchester
World
City
Cup.
hat right here. Yeah, MCFC.
I don't get soccer. Soccer just doesn't.
I understand why people like it. It's very world famous.
We'll go back to the tournament in a second, but I think I've explained this to you before, and if not, I have to again. I only ever watched soccer during the World Cup because that's the most exciting time. Because you're cheering for your country against the rest of the world.
Right.
I mean, that's awesome.
Exactly.
And
I think that speaks to this. It's kind of how the same way it is for March Madness is, people who usually don't care that much about college basketball or sports in general get involved because it's fun filling out a bracket,
and
competing against people.
It's like there's so many teams involved.
Right.
And it's a tournament. March Madness is still a tournament across the country. World Cup is a tournament across the world.
Right. And so it's even on a larger scale.
Yeah, and it's just that it's with soccer instead of basketball. But I was very much not a regular soccer watcher. And then the way that the 2011 Premier League, because the Premier League is basically like the big leagues over or the main league over in England for soccer. Like there's the Premier League, then there's the Champions League, and there's a bunch of leagues below it. But the Premier League is the top one. And the way that season ended, where Manchester City was in a tiebreaker atop because it goes on points, kind of like hockey, where you get like 3 points for a win, 0 for a loss, and it's 1 for a tie. They were in a virtual tie with their arch rivals against at the last game of the season, and if they won, they would have finished up tied, but they would have won overall on goal differential. So they had to win, but then they were up 1-0, then they went down 2-1 at home, and then they found out that their arch rivals were up 1-0.
Was this like during a halftime?
This was at the same time. Like the games ended within 2 minutes of each other.
Oh my god.
And so Manchester City is down 2-1, and in stoppage time, which is one thing that a lot of people don't understand. It's like injury time, basically.
Right.
Like if there's goals or there's injuries or anything, they added on 5 minutes. And Manchester City scored a tying and a go-ahead goal in those 5 minutes, won it, and it was the last game of the season.
Wow.
And so they won the title with like 2 minutes to go in the Premier League season. And they snatched it from their most hated rival.
The rival. Like, that's the best part about it.
It was the most thrilling thing I've seen that wasn't March Madness. And
because
it hooked me.
It's the same kind of stakes.
Yeah. And it hooked me. And you have to find something like that to get you to... It's why I still don't watch hockey with consistency. Because I I enjoy hockey, but I can't get
you don't have
into
that kind
it.
of,
I don't have a passion for it because nothing has drawn me to it.
Right.
And that's what it takes. And
a good story, something
something
that you can cling to that has value to it besides the game itself.
Manchester City, even though they're kind of like the Yankees of the Premier League because they've got so much frickin' money, they had just been taken over at that point in time. They hadn't won a championship in over 40 years. So it was just a good curse. It was a good overall story, basically.
Wow.
And so just all that drama on the last day, that is what drew me in. So to go back to what I was saying originally, I understand why people don't like soccer. It's really easy to hate.
It's just the game itself.
You need something like that to make you draw. Like, you need something to cheer for. And if you don't have a team that you care about, then you're not going to care about the sport if you don't like the sport.
Exactly.
If you like the team, then you grow to enjoy the sport. Yeah. And I have more, but it's still not my favorite. I prefer American football by leaps and bounds to soccer.
Yeah.
The fact that I call it soccer still tells
soccer.
Me that, and
that
not
you're not
football,
that hardcore.
Not football is that I'm not.
You're not hardcore unless you live hardcore.
Yeah.
But the Legend of the Legend was way hardcore. Anyway, sorry, that took way longer than I anticipated. I apologize.
Might have to
you devil.
Okay, anyways, let's get back to our brackets.
Who do you guys have winning it? Or actually, let's go this. Who do you guys have in your Final Four, and then who do you have winning it?
Final Four.
Okay, should we go up, down, up?
I'm just going to say who's in my
Just
Final
say
Four.
who's in your Final Four.
Florida, Creighton, Iowa State, and Wichita State.
Wichita State.
And who do you have winning?
I have Florida over Wichita State in the final.
Ooh, Wichita State going all the way to the final.
And then losing the heartbreaker one away from the perfect season.
Tyler, that's soulless.
I know. Well, I'm an Ohio
been
fan,
watching too much Game of Thrones.
I've been a Cleveland fan for too long.
That is true.
I've lost my
that
soul.
is true. My Final Four. Now keep in mind, I'm always biased when I fill out my bracket. My winner is always one of my two favorite teams, unless they both suck.
I try not to be, but it's
I
tough.
try to be very
I
partial.
can't be. My Final Four, Florida and Michigan State on the one side, and then the other side it's Creighton and Duke. I have Duke and Michigan State in the final. Are you a Tar Heels fan?
No, I don't like either. I don't like anyone in the ACC. I hate everyone in the ACC.
Fair enough. But anyway, I got Duke beating Michigan State in the finals.
Duke beating Michigan State.
Duke beating Michigan State. Jabari's going to be insane.
I have Duke losing to Wichita State that'd be the Elite Eight, I believe.
Yes, it'd be Elite. Yeah.
I almost, and this is proof too that, and we'll sorry to step on yours again, but this is proof that I am not only not biased, I am so far away from bias. Because I almost had, out of that region, I almost picked Michigan.
Really?
In fact, the first time I filled out a bracket, I picked Michigan over Wichita State, but I was just like,
Michigan.
I think that they're good.
They're very good.
They're very good, and I really wanted to pick them, but I was just like, I feel like Wichita State is more of a team of destiny.
Prove something
and,
too, yeah.
And they need a signature win, and a signature win would be against Duke, but Duke is like pretty good this year. They're not like,
plus they're pretty
amazing like a Michigan team is.
Yeah. They've been up and down.
I see that as their signature win against Michigan.
Yeah.
And then beating Creighton and then losing to the best team in the country.
I feel like Michigan, they could lose their first game or they could get all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah.
They've it's hard to, and I feel the same way about UNC, which that's when I'm really struggling with because I'm a Tar Heel fan, which is way better than Duke.
I keep waffling. That's one of the ones I'm just like, do I really expect them to win, or do I expect them to get knocked out in the first round?
They could get knocked out in the first round, or they could get all the way from I don't know, to like maybe the Elite Eight.
Well, because
it just depends
who would
on
they run into there.
they'd run into Iowa State, and then they'd possibly run into
who's a 2 seed down there?
Villanova. Who is going
I don't know.
to run
I'm not
into
sure about
either
Villanova.
who's either going to run into St. John's or UConn at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't.
UNC's played their best when they've played ranked teams this year, and they've lost to some awful teams.
Well, they got to play some awful teams to get to the good teams.
Do we all agree that while they're good, Virginia's the weakest 1 seed?
Definitely.
I have them losing. Actually, I think I have Arizona losing before them or in the same round as them.
Yeah.
It depends on what bracket.
I have Virginia losing to Michigan State. I think that's
who I have them losing to. Also,
to
Michigan
16.
State, and then I have Michigan State losing to UC.
Have you noticed how everyone?
Maybe it's the other way around.
After this weekend, after all the championship games have been done, everyone's flocked to Michigan State and Louisville.
It's true.
I mean, in some of my brackets, I've had them going. I'd love to see Louisville repeat because we haven't had a repeat since 2007 with
Gators.
The Gators.
I'm going to tell you, every time, and I didn't pick them this year, so they'll do well. Every time I pick Louisville, they lose in the first round.
That's what
when
happens.
They were a 4 seed 2 or 3 years ago, but they were they could have easily been a 3 seed.
Yeah, an underrated.
They lost to, I think, was that Davidson, or that was maybe even farther back. But they lost to a 13.
Was it when Curry was still there?
That was, I think, the first time that I really banked on them, and then they lost to Davidson. But then it was a couple years ago. They were a 4 seed, and that was the year that I think every 4 seed lost to every 13 seed. Was the last time that
was a massacre.
That was the last time I really, really counted on Louisville, and ever since then I'm like, I don't have them going farther than the Sweet 16. Whether they're a 1 seed, an 8 seed, doesn't matter. I don't put my trust in them because every time I do, they lose in the first round.
That's how I feel about Pitt. Pitt had done that for a number of years. I can't stand them.
It's fun though.
I change it up in my brackets. Every single bracket, and I mean it's a 50-50 game probably because it's an 8-9 seed, and Colorado and Pitt are both good.
Colorado.
But I picked Colorado every time that game came up because it's nothing personal. You just lose every year, Pitt.
I think it's why I've stopped picking Georgetown now too.
Georgetown.
Georgetown.
I mean, Tyler's still bitter about Georgetown.
Well, I mean, last year I had Georgetown. In every bracket that I filled out, they were in my Final Four, and they lost to Florida Gulf Coast, a 2 seed losing to a 15 seed.
Cinderella,
they didn't lose. They got housed.
Yeah,
Florida Gulf Coast made them look like a bunch of just.
I remember. I don't think I was watching that game, but I was checking the score on my phone. Every time I looked, I just laughed. I was
never count on the Big East. Or is it the Big East?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, Pitt's in the ACC now, but that doesn't change how.
No,
but
so is Syracuse.
For the most part, for a while, if it was a Big 12 team, chances are I was probably.
I think the only team that I don't feel that way about is.
Syracuse.
Is Cincinnati.
Yeah,
okay.
Because Cincinnati's made noise.
Cincinnati is one of the best, on paper, one of the best dark horses in this tournament.
Yeah.
And I probably put a lot more faith in them than I should have.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
you said you weren't biased.
Yeah.
He said he wasn't biased.
Yes.
He said.
Hey, I lived there. I didn't go there.
It really hurts me that Cincinnati has to play Michigan State in the Sweet 16.
I know.
Because Michigan State's looking so good right now.
Right.
And I could not pick
the
Cincinnati
one other
to
team
win the game.
from the Big East.
That's what's. I picked Cincinnati, and I probably shouldn't.
The one other team in the Big East besides Cincy before they left for the ACC would have been Syracuse. Mm-hmm. That you could almost if there's 2 coaches I think that you can count the most on having their kids ready for the tournament each year, no matter what their record's been, is Izzo and Boeheim.
Definitely.
I mean, Syracuse has had a few bad years, in the past. I don't know 8-9 years.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I feel like him and Izzo especially have been the most consistent.
Izzo's number 1 as far as I mean, he took what was it, a couple years ago, a 6 seed Michigan State team to the Final Four, to the championship.
Yeah, the seeding really doesn't matter for them.
No, it's the exact opposite. Like, you don't trust the Big East, and you can put almost all your faith in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
because they're so battle tested.
They're
like,
more dependable.
If they are a 5 seed or higher, you'd probably be an idiot to bet against them.
Right.
And I mean, I've tried my hardest to not trust Wisconsin because they are the one Big Ten team that has burned me in the past.
Yeah.
And this is also the best they've looked in years.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's tough.
And I told you guys this a little bit ago too. The only reason that I actually ended up picking them over Oregon is because the game is in Milwaukee. Their first 2 games are in Milwaukee.
Location. That's something I think it's always underrated.
Oh, it's definitely always forgotten.
And they don't always telegraph it. They don't always tell you, hey, these games are being played in that area.
Yeah.
It's not something that it's more about the matchups, but you forget, having a home crowd during the tournament because so many teams travel to different places that it's just not usually a big thing.
When it's not like a 1 and a 16 or a 2 and a 15 or even a 3 and a 14, if it's anything lower than that, I will look up where it's at because you can count on that crowd taking somebody out of it.
Right.
Or putting them into it.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, Ben, who's your Final Four? We didn't get to that.
Yeah, we somehow missed that in all of that talk.
I've made a number of brackets, but overall, I think I'm trying to choose
your most
which
consistent
bracket.
final.
The one I believe in the most had Michigan State, Florida, Louisville, and who did I have coming out of the West?
Arizona, Wisconsin.
It wasn't Arizona. It was Wisconsin. Creighton was close. I think it might have been
San Diego State.
San Diego State.
I think I remember you saying something about them.
And then it was going to be Louisville and Florida, I think, playing in the final. And Louisville's going to get that close to the national championship and then lose it.
Okay. If you remember, what's your biggest upset? Like
you called?
Like a 12 over one. First of all, for this year, but like a 12 over a 5 or a 13 over a 4, or do you have a 14 over a 3?
I have a 13 over a 4. I have New Mexico State going to the Sweet 16.
I think I called that in one of my. I think I might have. I don't know if I had a 14 over 3. I know. Well, besides that, I know that I didn't have any 15 over 2s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I definitely had every 2.
I've never predicted a 15 over a 2.
Was Duke when Duke was beat by Lehigh? Was that?
I didn't.
That was a 15 and a 2.
That was a 15.
I called that. I was so happy, but I did it mostly just to spite
Just
Duke because I'm a Tar Heel.
That's where bias pays off.
Yeah. Exactly, it does pay off sometimes. I was so damn happy when that happened. I would not stop giving you crap for it either. Oh, that was such a good day.
I think the highest one that I've ever predicted was when Ohio beat Georgetown a couple years ago.
Yes.
14 over a 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then didn't they lose eventually to UNC? And it was a close game.
I think it was actually the next round.
Was that the next round that they played on?
I think so.
I thought they had gotten into the Sweet 16. Or maybe it was to get into the Sweet 16.
I think it was because I thought UNC was a 2 seed that year.
Yeah.
And that would make sense that they would have well, no, that would have been the Sweet 16 where they would have faced them if UNC was a 2 seed.
Yeah.
I forget. I'm going to have to talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to look that up.
No, I remember because they kept stating that year, holy crap, look at all these Ohio teams because Ohio,
yeah, there were 4 Ohio teams in the Sweet
OSU,
16.
Yeah.
And was it Dayton?
Or was it Cincinnati?
I think
it was Cincy. It was Cincy. I remember everyone was raving that year, and we were all like, "Yeah, what's up, rep that state?"
Repping that Ohio.
Yeah,
that was
a good year.
That was 2012, and they upset Georgetown that year.
Yeah.
I remember. I think it would have been John Wall's only year at Kentucky. I picked Cornell
because they won
going to the Sweet 16, and they did.
I remember that.
Then I picked Cornell to beat Kentucky, and that didn't work out. I just don't like Kentucky, so.
No, I only have them.
Although I will say the year Anthony Davis's year, I picked them to win it all just because they were so good.
I mean,
We're thinking of different years because the year that Ohio made it to the Sweet 16 and all four Cincinnati, Ohio State, and Xavier made it, they were a 13 seed and they beat a 4 seed Michigan.
That's right. I remember they beat Michigan. Because
that was the same year that Lehigh beat Duke and Norfolk State beat Missouri.
I think I might have called that game too because Michigan was a rival, and I said, okay, Ohio's going to upset them.
Yeah.
I need to go change some of my brackets. You guys just helped me realize
a
trend.
You guys just helped me of the Buckeye
You guys just helped me realize a trend in my choice of games. Oh my gosh.
You make too many brackets, Ben.
I do. I like making multiple.
So
it's more fun that way. Creating more scenarios.
It was 2010.
Different pathways.
It was 2010 is when Ohio upset Georgetown because the story that I read at the top said about they were going to the Sweet 16, and it said just 2 years, and it was from 2012, and it said just 2 years ago, Ohio upset Georgetown in the tournament.
Okay.
So it would have been 2010 when they beat them.
Right.
Either way, I predicted that, and I'm happy about it.
But in response to your brackets or whatever, I'm gonna pull some Game of Thrones. What's more, 5 brackets or 1 bracket? 1 bracket with 1 purpose. Robert Baratheon.
I don't know if that
mercy
applies.
in his soul.
I did 1 bracket. Actually, I didn't do 1 bracket last year because I had different champions. I had the same Final Four in 3 different brackets, but I had different champions.
Mm-hmm.
I think in both of them.
And then Georgetown.
But I had Georgetown in the finals regardless. But yeah, I think it was 2 years ago where for the first time ever I did 1 bracket with 1 purpose, and it looked ridiculous after the first round.
See, that's the thing is like. I get what you mean, like 1 purpose as in, you research really, really hard on 1 bracket and go all in. But
my first one
but
is
that
all
one
gut.
that one you study for the most and think about too much is usually the one that goes to crap the quickest.
It always
because okay, I've been in brackets like in school, like some of our professors would like set up brackets for like class, and if you'd win, you get extra credit or something like that.
It's always
and the girls would be like, I like their mascot, I'm gonna choose them,
and it works.
It freaking works, and it's both annoying and just funny.
Maybe I should do that with one later tonight. Is just go home and
based
fill out a mascot bracket.
My boss,
I like this one the most.
My boss said he was gonna fill one out.
No, I
that
can't.
was based off. He'd look at each team and be like, which mascot could kick the other one's ass? That's how he'd figure it out.
I think the problem for me is as much as I'd like to do that, I can't divorce myself from the fact that like I know these teams.
I know. It's like that's a no-brainer.
It's like I think if I went automatically 1s beat 16 seeds and 2s beat 15 seeds, although that's not a lock.
It's not a lock, but
it seems pretty typical. Everything else below that, fair game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But
man,
I just even thinking about it like makes me hurt. Like I can't bring myself to
just
mascots only.
Yeah. You tell yourself I'm better than this. I know more about sports than
and
this.
then your bracket has
highlights and then your bracket's like, hey,
deal with it.
You know more about sports.
Remember Stephen Curry? His 13 seed team?
Oh man, that was a good year. Only year that all 1 seeds made it to the Final Four.
I can't believe that's only the first
Kansas,
time.
UCLA,
UNC.
North Carolina, and Memphis.
What year was that again?
Oh, jeez.
I
don't remember which year. It would have been 2008 or...
Was that when D-Rose was at Memphis?
Yes.
That was his senior season?
That was his freshman season.
His only season. That would have been 08 then,
08, I believe, right? Yeah. Another crazy.
Because Jayhawks ended up winning.
Are we getting to our lista then?
The lista for tonight is not...
I want to explain it.
Yeah.
Again?
Time I've explained it. Okay, so the lista is... I was in a podcast before this, and we had a list. It's basically a top 5 list. And unfortunately,
top 5,
in
top 3.
our second failed audio podcast, although it would have been the first true episode, we had a great lista.
Yes, we did.
And it was top 5 movie trailers that got us pumped for the movie.
Ooh.
And yeah, it was. We
It was
talked about
great.
that forever.
It was great. It was pretty awesome.
It was a really good one. So maybe we'll bring that back someday, just because it was a good one.
We should, yeah, definitely.
But the lista for tonight, and it's not really a top 5 because I
can't think of top 5.
I can't think of 5 off the top of my head, and it was such kind of last notice, anyways.
Yeah.
But the top 5,
it's a good topic though,
because it's so close. We're gonna say top favorite March Madness moments.
Yes.
And I'm gonna start with my number 1 forever, untouchable, will not be defeated. Ohio State versus Ron Lewis hits a shot against
That
Xavier.
was on my list. I remember that.
Gus
I
Johnson
remember that.
loses his mind.
Love
because
that.
I
That's one of my
watched-
favorites.
I still watch the highlight of that in 240p on YouTube regularly because
that was insane. That was a good year.
I remember I watched that game live.
Yeah,
and
same here.
I
remember
remember
watching it.
The dude for Xavier had not missed a free throw that day. He was perfect. And I think he was 5 for 5, and he hit the first one. The second one rims out.
And how many were we down at that point?
We were down 3.
3.
We
right?
were down 3.
Yeah.
And Odin had just fouled out. Too.
Right.
Yeah, we had to go small.
And
Conley
so we got the ball back with 8 seconds to go or so, down by 3. Conley brings it up the floor, hands it off to Lewis. He gets the screen,
pops it,
busts it from the right wing.
Oh my goodness!
With like 1.2 seconds to go.
It was ridiculous.
And then Ohio State wins in overtime.
Yep, that's on my list. I remember. And then after that, they went and played Tennessee and came back from like a 20-point deficit.
Yeah,
I forgot how many many tough games they had to play.
And then they lost to Florida.
Yeah,
I remember that Xavier game. There was a lot riding too because Mata used to coach there.
Yeah.
And like there was just a lot of storylines going in.
I remember that though. That was
that's my
great number.
That's
one.
my everything else that I mention at any point during this lista is one that I enjoyed. Ron Lewis is untouchable.
Yeah, that's
untouchable.
I have my untouchable number 1. And it's not really a moment. It's kind of just in general, just a tournament run, and that would be 2000. Jeez, what would have been 2010 Butler's run.
Oh yeah,
yes,
because this really gets me because that year my friend Dylan Kaufman, I'm sure most of you know him. Some of you who don't know us won't know him, but he was best friend in high school. He was getting recruited by Butler, and he took me out with him for a visit during the season. And I mean, we went out. We met Brad Stevens, who now coaches the Celtics. So I've met an NBA coach, which is awesome. But we went to the Hinkle Fieldhouse where the Hoosiers was met, where they played. Yeah, where Hoosiers was filmed, where Butler played. We went in the locker room. We got really close to Gordon Hayward and all them while they were doing a walkthrough, whatever. We sat on the bench, and it was an awesome experience. And I remember that year, me and Dylan both picked Butler going to the Final Four just because we had been there visiting. Dylan had them winning the whole thing.
He was that close.
He was that close. I had them in the Final Four.
He was a bank shot away.
I mean, just that entire run, it was ridiculous because the entire time I'm thinking, wow, I went and visited this team.
Those guys.
I met that guy on TV, and they are making a serious run through this tournament.
And then they almost did it the next year too.
I know, which is even more incredible because they didn't.
I still
have
can't believe they made it back to back.
I still don't understand.
I don't know how they replaced.
Of course, that next year was not a good year. That was my least favorite tournament that I've watched maybe ever.
Yeah.
Who did they play in the final?
UConn.
Kemba
Walker.
Yeah, Kemba Walker.
Well, Butler went cold that game. They couldn't hit anything.
It still came down to the very end.
That has my...
it wasn't as close. No,
it wasn't as close, but I thought it...
UConn had control.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm
that tournament, as much as I didn't like that tournament, it had one of my favorite moments from a conference tournament ever, which was Walker's game winner against Pitt, where he just shattered the ankles of that one dude and just like... has nobody on him, just cool step back, sinks it at the
Yeah.
buzzer.
He was a freak.
He was filthy.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable in college.
Yeah.
But I mean, but going back to that Butler run, and it breaks my heart too, because Duke was in the final against them.
Yeah.
And I love Duke, but I was rooting so hard for Butler that game.
As you should.
And
everybody
definitely.
loves an underdog story.
Yeah.
Even
And
if
I
it's,
still love
even if it's against your team. Like, if Ohio State somehow made it to the finals this year, I wouldn't consider that an underdog. Because Ohio State's a 6th seed this year. Even though they're a big program, they're a 6th seed.
Yeah.
But if they were a 1 seed and made it, and then on the other side, it's
had an experience like that.
Either it's like the
Harvard or Stanford,
or the only exception is Wichita State. Even though they're a 1 seed, they're
no one expects
team,
them to get far.
They're on a mission from God.
So, but I mean, I remember that shot. I thought it was in when he shot it.
It was so
Oh,
Oh, it
my
was good.
goodness.
It looked
It
good.
looked great, but and I still
It
love
was
Gordon
crazy.
Hayward in the NBA.
It was scary how
Yes.
close that shot was.
So,
All right,
that's
Ben.
my definitive number one. You can't touch this.
I don't really have a number one. I have a number of moments or like runs I remember. I remember the 05 UNC team winning
Against
it all
Illinois.
against Illinois. I partially like remembering that so much just to reminisce. There was actually an article on Grantland last week talking about the 5 starters from that team
Done nothing.
and where the heck they are now in their career.
Sean May.
I need to read that.
Sean May.
I don't even remember the other
It came
ones.
out right after Raymond Felton had the gun charge, the felony
okay.
charge.
Raymond Felton.
And it just was like a moment. Let's look at where this championship team,
Oh my
with all of these
goodness.
ridiculously awesome players in high school who got recruited to UNC are now. And
They
they
are
mentioned
nowhere.
Sean May and Raymond Felton.
I don't even know who else was on that team. To be honest.
Who was crap?
Was
Jay.
I
forget
Marvin
their names.
Williams, was he
Marvin,
on that
yeah,
team?
that's who it was.
Yeah.
That
He's the
name
one I was
sounds
thinking of.
familiar, actually.
Yeah.
But it's just funny to see, like, none of those players are relevant. Felton's been the most relevant, and he was all right for a while.
Mm-hmm.
He had his being in shape problems, being traded back and forth from the Knicks, and that's pretty much all we remember him for now, besides this gun felony thing. But it's just funny to like remember. Wow, those guys were actually amazing at one point in their
Yeah.
career.
That's funny.
Last year, I love Aaron Kraft. I don't care what anyone says.
I love
Love
he is,
Aaron
he is
Kraft.
the epitome of what a kind of college basketball player you want to have on your team in terms of the passion he has, how hard he works. You just don't see it that often anymore because of the way college is set up to, frankly, be a farm team for so many players now that are just going to go to the NBA. When he hit the shot last year,
It was such a bad looking
Oh
shot.
my
It was so bad.
He was standing still and just jumped and shot it.
the
And
hitch.
it went in.
Somehow.
Say what you want about his hitch. He drained it, though.
I know.
It's
It looked terrible, and that's coming from somebody who has no basketball shot
yeah.
whatsoever. But it looked so bad. But at the end of the day, who cares?
It went in. Hey,
It
a
went
bucket.
in.
They don't ask how, they ask
Yep.
how many.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that was the one that needed to be made.
Yep.
And it was and it was funny because me and my roommate Josh Miller were watching that in our dorm room at the time, and we had some people on our floor who they were walking by and like saw we were watching it intensely because we're Ohio State fans. And I don't know, they're from out of the state. I don't know where they were from. But every time they walked by the room, they'd like be talking crap just for like fun or whatever. Be like, oh man, Ohio State's in trouble now, whatever. And he hit that shot, and we just like yell and are jumping and going crazy. And we're just like yelling out the door, what now? We can't hear you from all the way down here. And it was just, that was a fun time. Smack talk, that's half the fun. And then the other one I can think of is E.T.'s game-winning shot against Michigan, the half-court shot.
That was conference.
That was a
villain.
conference.
And it was conference,
Yeah.
technically, but
It's against Michigan.
yeah,
Who cares?
it was against the rival, and I can't.
I wish
I
that
can't
was
pass
March.
that up.
That was actually March Madness.
I mean,
because it would-
technically,
I
it's
count it as March
conference,
Madness.
It's kind of March Madness.
I
Yeah.
count it as March Madness personally. It's in March, and crazy things
See,
happen in
I
conference
think
tournaments.
I don't, and that's why I can't put it above Ron Lewis.
Right.
Because it's close, but it
Well, I mean,
technically
Ron Lewis's shot there was a lot more on the line too.
it's true.
They got all the way to the national championship game because of that.
Yeah.
So I definitely put Ron Lewis over, even if that was in the tournament.
Yeah.
But it's against Michigan.
I know, it is against Michigan.
And it was a half quarter. Just ridiculous.
Yeah.
With way less time on the clock.
Yeah. I
Like
mean, he heaved it
like
almost.
he got it. It was like here, and
He heaved
and
it
the
almost
buzzer
instant,
went.
Yeah.
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 Like Ron Lewis's shot went in with time, and I'm not trying to talk myself out of loving. Like I know Ron
because there was
Lewis
still
wins,
a lot more on the line.
but
yeah.
I'm trying to. I had another one, and then you started talking about Butler, and it disappeared,
Yeah.
and it. I can't.
I'm
I
trying to
can think
remember
of
older
one. I
ones.
know one that will always stick in my mind. Mario Chalmers in the championship game against Memphis.
Mhm.
Draining
That
that shot.
cold-blooded 3 to send it to OT.
Hate
Yeah.
him now, but that was
Hate
Yeah.
him now, but oh my goodness, that was incredible.
and I really appreciate it because it beat John Calipari,
Yeah,
which
see. I
you
think
don't need to convince me any
I
other
hate
way.
I
why that
hate
was a good
John Calipari more at all times than I ever did or will hate Mario Chalmers.
shot. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I
And
still
that
appreciate
makes it
him for
okay.
that.
Although I picked Memphis to win that year.
So did I.
And I think I even had Kansas in the final game, too. And I had Memphis winning.
I had Kansas losing in the Final Four that year,
Did you?
and I had Memphis winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
I obviously had UNC because they were
Well, of course you did.
amazing that year, and all the 1 seeds were there.
Tyler
It was-
Psycho T. Hansborough.
Hey, he got his.
Yeah, he got it.
Yes, he did.
Haters gonna hate.
Yeah. Any other moments that come to your guys' mind?
I still can't think of the one that I was just going to, and now I'm frustrated about it. But well.
Rain check. We'll
Yes.
talk about it maybe next
Rain
time.
check.
Yeah, I mean, if we do another one of these
We
before
can have
March Madness ends, we can
or-
even do our favorite March Madness moments from this year
Or-
if there are any good ones.
Yeah.
Or even after March
Yeah, there
Madness
will
ends,
be.
we can just have a reaction podcast
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We'll have lots of reaction podcasts, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, once Game of Thrones starts.
Oh,
Game of Thrones.
boy.
Oh, once Game of Thrones starts, we're going to be busy.
Yes, this is gonna
The
be.
tax
like-
season will be over, so I'll be open.
And I don't know what my schedule will look like, but I'm assuming that I will probably have time
Yeah.
Alright.
at the very least.
Well, does that wrap it up for today, then?
I think
think
so.
we're
We're
good.
over an hour and a half, so
Okay, yeah, I think that's good.
yay.
That's very good.
All right. Well,
Thank you all for joining us.
yes,
Thanks for listening.
yes. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you liked the pilot. This is Geeks in Suits, even though we're not wearing suits.
Next time.
Chase,
Maybe
Ben, Tyler. Yeah, I don't know what we'll talk about next time, but we'll figure something
Yeah,
out.
hey, whatever pops up in the news, we''ll talk about it. So,
In
We'll
the
figure
world
it
of
out.
pop culture. Alrighty.
Sayonara.
thank you.
Adios.